into the secrets of longevity, adapting our lifestyles to increase our health span. So first, please, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome our moderator for this session. Put your hands together for Anupriya Acharya, CEO, Publicis Groupe South Asia. And now, for this session, we will be engaging in conversation with Dr. Ranney. He is the founder and CEO of Human Edge. Let me tell you a little bit about his work as well. Thank you, sir. His mission is to help everyone live better and longer, and as a longevity physician, he's dedicated to helping overwhelmed high performers and CXOs. He spent 2 decades forging a transformative path in healthcare, and today he works at the forefront of longevity sciences, spearheading Human Edge as well as investor-backed digital health ventures. In addition, please, I have to say this, so bear with me. To his numerous accolades, he is also a Guinness World Record holder for backward running. Congratulations, sir. That's absolutely amazing. Best-selling author and a board member at the International Coaching Federation. I'm definitely taking notes backstage. Over to you all.
Thank you very much, Prisha. Welcome, Dokim.
Thank you.
Pleasure always to have you around us. Thank you for doing this for us. So the way we are going to run this session, Doc M, as we call him, he will put some opening remarks, and then we are going to be in a Q&A with him. But before we start that, I wanted to just elaborate a bit on the book, the best-selling author that Frisha spoke about, which is At the Human Edge. And I would very much encourage everyone to buy a copy of it and read it. It talks about the human physiology under extreme conditions. It talks about what happens to human physiology at the height of Mount Everest, where there's very little oxygen. It talks about what happens to human physiology in the depth of Mariana Trenches, where, of course, it's tremendous pressure on top of you. What happens to you in the space where there's no gravity? What happens to you in the heat of Sahara, and what happens to you in the extreme cold of Antarctica. It is a fabulous book. And how many people over here are adventure enthusiasts? Raise your hands, please. Well, that's quite a few. Like, it's a full 1% of people who are adventure enthusiasts. I strongly recommend that you read the book. And for the rest of you who are not adventure enthusiasts, just to cope with your daily lives and daily jobs and a few drinks in the evening, you please be listening to this session very, very carefully. Doc M has some fabulous insights for you. Over to you, Doc M.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm sorry we can't be doing this in Goa. The last time Anupriya and I had a chat, we were actually walking along a beach in Goa, right? We had gone for one of the events. That's right. Cool. Well, thanks for investing the time. I'm stuck between the last session with incredible women on stage and lunch, so that's not an easy place for me to be. But hopefully what I can share with you over the next 20 minutes or so will add more years to your life, and certainly more life to your years. And unfortunately, it's not just when we get old that we see disease. You see, in India, since we've attained independence in the last 75 odd years, we have roughly added around 30 years to our life expectancy. We've done much more than the rest of the world. The global average has been 19 years of lifespan extension. So we're all living 19 years longer than we were in the 50s. And much of this is down to the incredible advancements made in drugs like statins and cardiovascular medications and anti-diabetic medications and antimicrobial agents like antibiotics, new surgical techniques, better child delivery, lower infant mortality, etc. And that's helped contribute us towards living living longer. But the problem with that, as you can see on this pie chart on the right, is that we're living longer, yes, but we are living sicker for longer. The average age of onset of first chronic disease is now happening at a younger and younger age. In fact, I'm not a pediatrician, but my youngest patient that I have is 16, 17 years old. We're seeing diseases like insulin resistance diabetes and hypertension and PCOS and mental health conditions and cancer and so many more happening at younger ages when people are still in their second or third decade of life. So this is a problem. And it's not just a problem for the world, it's a problem for us in India. Because whilst we have many accolades to our name, largest startup country, fastest growing developing country, etc., I won't say too much, we're in the midst of an election, but we also have a number of other challenges. We are the diabetic capital of the world. Roughly 100 million people in the country have diabetes or pre-diabetes. Almost 40% of all of you in the room, I'm assuming representative of the population, will have early stages or grade 1, grade 2 fatty liver disease. 1.4 million people across the country have some form of cancer. We are now the fastest growing cancer country on earth. Almost more than a quarter of us suffer from cardiovascular diseases. A fifth of us have poor sleep. We are officially the world's most sleep-deprived country, and we are the world's most sedentary country as well. And both of those together has now made us one of the most obese countries in the world as well. So these are not good statistics that I'm presenting, but the good news is that we can do something about it. We need to reframe the conversation in society, and there's no one better to do that reframing than folks from the marketing and media agencies to try and tell a new story to the rest of the country. We need to change our mindset away from being one which is focused on disease and sick care, and remember that actually these incredible bodies can do incredible things like climbing Everest and running marathons and swimming seas and oceans, etc. So how do we do that? What is it that folks like longevity physicians, actually do on a day-to-day basis, and what can we learn here through our conversation today? I hope you can all see this graph on the left. On the x-axis, that's the line going along the bottom, that's the number of years that we live. On the y-axis, that's the line going towards the top, that's the quality of those years that we live. So our job in society, your job in telling stories now, is not just in extending the number of years along the x-axis. Sure, we want to help people go from the average age of life expectancy in India today, which is 70.2, to 75, 80, 90. Those are great things. We'll spend more time building memories. But we also want to ensure that we move along the y-axis, that we shift the curve higher, so that it's not just the number of years, but it's what we do in those years that matter as well. Can I have the energy and the vitality to trek up a mountain in my 70s? Will I have the upper body strength to lift my grandchild above my head? Will I have the ability to dance with my life partner? Will I have the opportunity to write if I want to? These are things that we may consider very simple things in our 20s, 30s, and 40s. But as we get older, they become harder and harder, and we need to work at it to ensure that we maintain those benefits. So when we rethink the story in our mind, we're moving away from the old world of medicine 1.0, which is primarily around infectious disease control. We have shifted away from medicine 2.0, which is where we live today, which is around non-communicable diseases. And we're now entering a world of medicine 3.0, which can be preventative, proactive, participatory, and personalized, i.e., the onus and agency of control is now with all of you as individuals. And you see your doctor to stay healthy, not just when you're falling sick. So how do we make those changes? The formula, the equation, is actually very simple. And unfortunately, the medical establishment and the institutions that we have around us have complicated it. It's not about fancy drugs, and if we want to talk about geroprotective molecules, i.e. medicines that can help you live longer, and fancy therapies and interventions, we can do all of those things. They can give you a little bit of a competitive edge, and it's certainly something which the athletes, the Olympians, and the IPL cricketers that I work with have an opportunity to engage in. But for all of us, it can be as simple as these 5 simple practices. It's the importance of sleep. Remembering that sleep is our freely available, completely underutilized, performance-enhancing drug that we have been given by nature. How few of us have the opportunity of a good night's sleep? How much fewer actually have the ability to sleep for 7 to 8 hours every day? Sleep is important not just for our mental faculties and our emotional health, but also for our physical health as well. A poor night's sleep leads to a 4 to 8-fold increase in insulin resistance over the next 24 to 48 hours. 2 or more poor nights of sleep reduces our ability to focus, concentrate, and make decisions. There is now a positive association shown over a lifetime poor sleep practices and the advancement of neurodegenerative disorders like Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease, etc. So we need to get people to sleep more. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is we need to eat clean. We need to move away from a world, I was looking at the menu outside, guys. We need to move away from a world which is excessive calories, too much carbs, too much trans fats, laden with preservatives and chemicals. And we need to remember that eating is actually a very simple thing. It needs to be real food, not food that comes out of the packet. It needs to be food which is sustainable, that we can eat over the course of our lifetime and not get consumed by fad diets. And it needs to be food which is balanced from a macronutrient and a micronutrient and a microbiome perspective. The third rule, and the one I love, is the ability to move. For us all to be getting up and getting out and getting moving every single day. Because our machine, this biology, this human body, was made, designed, evolved to move. If you have a car, no matter what brand, no matter how fantastic it is, if it sits in your garage for day after day, year after year, it will pretty soon disintegrate. It's the same thing with our human body. It's there to move aerobically, anaerobically, to lift, to resist, to flex, to balance. And that's what we need to introduce into our lives again. Then we need to breathe. Now, all of you are breathing, hopefully. But we need to breathe in a way which helps us manage and mitigate the stresses that we have around us. Not just the mental stresses and the burnout, but also the physical, the environmental stresses that we have as well. We're living in a country and a part of the world where so much of those wisdoms have been there for thousands of years that we have taken for granted. They've been repackaged, gone to the West, and now being sold back. And we need to remember those practices and build them back into our day-to-day lives. So breathing, stress mitigation is a very important part. And the last thing is the ability to connect. We are simultaneously the most technologically connected generation of our species, but we are also the generation that suffers the most from loneliness as well. We're constantly surrounded by people, but we feel that we are most alone. And that piece of connection, of human relationships, of joy and purpose has gone from society, and we need to reintroduce and bring that back in again. So it's 5 simple steps. Of course, it goes deeper and can get more complicated. But the fact of the matter is that nothing that I've just shared around this framework, and which Anupriya and I will dive into, is something that is beyond our control. We don't need to go to a fancy spa or an expensive clinic. These are all things that we have control over, and we don't need to wait till we're sick before we see the doctor. And as we are consumed by technologies and screens, particularly later on in the day, this is becoming an increasing problem. So one way of managing this actually is a simple pair of glasses that you can buy over any e-commerce platform, which has got a yellow lens, and it blocks the it's a polarized yellow lens, and it blocks the blue-white light hitting the back of your retina, allowing your melatonin levels to be high and for you to be sleepy. So if you're working after sunset, this is an example of a small change that you can do to improve. Apple cider vinegar, ACV. Have we got any ACV evangelists in the room? A few. Glucose spikes are a big problem. Our bodies don't like to have very large spikes in glucose, and we get a lot of that from the food we eat and the drinks that we consume. And apple cider vinegar has been shown to be able to flatten the spike in glucose. It's a simple product. You can add it to water before your meal. You can consume it after your meal, and it's again a methodology of dampening the glucose response, particularly in a country where so many of us suffer from insulin resistance and diabetes. And my favorite is actually to then take one meeting a day and make it a walking meeting, right? The idea that we all get, how many steps do we need? What's the magic number? 10,000. Some clever marketing genius came up with that. It's 8,000. It's closer to 8,000, right? 8,000 steps is roughly the equivalent of walking at an average pace for 1.5 hours. Now, I'm pretty sure that that's a hard number for all of us to do in the day. We don't spend that time outside. But if I can take one of your Zoom or Microsoft Teams meetings in a day and make that a walking or a standing meeting instead, that suddenly helps you accrue 4,500 to 5,000 steps there in itself. So this idea of re-looking at your life through the lens of, I want to live healthier, and what can I do with the obstructions and make them opportunities is what we need to start thinking about. And like this, there are literally hundreds and hundreds of biohacks that we can talk about, but I could go on forever. I do want to bring Anupriya on, and maybe we can have a bit of a conversation as well.
While walking?
While walking, yes, we'll do it standing.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Doc M. And before we start with, I had a few questions. Before we start on that, I just wanted to underline the purpose of this session and why we wanted to introduce this at Goa Fest. Doc M, you must know this. You work with us. In advertising, we almost thrive at the fact that, we thrive on the fact that we are in a B2B industry. We have, client deadlines to meet, and we almost celebrate that, we can work overnight and then we can go and make a pitch presentation in the morning, poor quality of sleep. And we, I've been in this industry for close to 30 years. And when I started, I pretty much realized that this was something of a celebration rather than an exception. And of course, things have changed over a period of time. And today we find that there is a lot of conversation around not only your wellness and, like you said, moving from sick care to health care, but also mental health and all of that. So what is a good age to start all of this, Doc M? Because I remember when we were in our 20s, we believed we will never turn 40. So I'm pretty sure some part of this room carries that. And is it relevant for them as well, or is it at a certain age that you need to start all of this?
So the answer is it's actually not related to age. It's the best age to have started is yesterday.
All right.
All right. Irrespective of how old you are, there is benefit to be accrued as soon as you start. I was reading a recent study which is published looking at the corporate workspace in India. They interviewed over 3,500 Indian organizations. And they found that less than 30% of the workforces within them actually engaged in the wellness programs or even did the annual health checks. And what made it worse, to your question about Gen Z, is that if you were above the age of 50, you were 2 times more likely to engage in that than if you were under the age of 30. And that's pretty scary because the average age in India is 27, and all of the statistics that I presented up front are based on what we consider this young demographic dividend, which if we don't help get them healthy now, will become a disaster in the next 10 years.
On that note, I come to the non-Gen Zs and some of us who have lived life on the edge, not the human edge, but a different kind of edge. Where, as I said, we have had a full life of, maybe poor quality sleep and bad food choices, and everything that you spoke about have not done that. So what's your advice for a lot of our people in this room are in that age group? What's your advice for them?
I'm being ageist. Muscle mass, very, very important. After the age of 30, we lose muscle at a rapidly declining rate, roughly 1% to 3% per decade. It compounds, and a muscle mass loss leads to a strength loss and a power loss. So no matter how old you are, it's a good idea to build resistance training into your day-to-day schedule, okay? Very, very important. The second thing is ensure you're taking the right micronutrients through the day. Our bodies are deficient in many micronutrients because the quality of soil has decreased. It's not there in the plant, it's not there in the food chain. And micronutrients are critical for so many of the metabolic reactions that we have around the body. So get your bloods checked and make sure you're taking good quality supplements to cover those. And the third, I think, for particularly the age, let's say beyond the 5th and 6th decades of life, is the value and the importance and activity that you put in your brain. Unfortunately, as we're getting older, we're now seeing, even in a young country like India, the rates of neurodegenerative disorders like dementia really beginning to skyrocket. And the reason that's happening is not just because we're getting older, but we have a secondary problem around bad metabolic disease. Alzheimer's disease today is being considered as type 3 diabetes. So poor glucose control over the course of your lifespan is more likely to put you at risk of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So taking care of brain health, whether it's daily activities, learning new skills, talking and interacting with people around you, staying up to date, these are very, very important because it's like a muscle. If you don't use it, you end up losing it.
Thank you very much, Doc M. Thank you, audiences. The one thought that we want to leave you with is, in the age of adaptability, keeping with the theme of the conference, it is never ever too late or too early to adapt to a healthy lifestyle. So please begin today. Thank you all. You've been a fabulous audiences. Thank you, Doc M, for doing this for us. Thank you.